I'm Alana Ferry, and I'm the Associate Editor for Canadian Manufacturing. We have a very special guest joining us today, François-Philippe Champagne, who is our Minister of Innovation, Science, and Industry. Minister, thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, it's a real pleasure. Thank you for having me. You know, for me, it's like a homecoming because I started my career in manufacturing, and therefore to be able to address you and all your members is a real privilege. Especially, this is one of the, I've only been on the jobs for I would say a few weeks now, but to have the opportunity early on to connect with manufacturers across the nation is a real privilege. So thank you for taking time with me, and I'm sure we'll try to make it as interesting as possible looking ahead. And I think all the opportunities that coming out of this crisis provides to manufacturers across our country.
Minister, thank you so much for saying that. I really love having that feedback from you. And you know, just like you said, you've only been in the role for a few weeks, and starting a new job in any circumstance is always so daunting and nerve-wracking. But unfortunately, there is no handbook on how to start a new job in the middle of a pandemic. What was it like stepping into this role in the middle of a global health crisis?
Well, I must say, it's the first time I changed job from my living room. I've not been in Ottawa since December. So when the Prime Minister called me in, you know, I've been around the block, actually. I had 4 different departments in the last 5 years. The last one was Foreign Affairs, in a very momentous time, coming out, obviously, of a very challenging time in geopolitics and the world economy. So it was a nice surprise, to say the least, to say, let's go back to your roots. Let's go back to businesses, the people you know, business leaders across our nation. But like all of us, you know, I had to reinvent myself. You see the background. I'm joining you from home. So we had to reinvent ourselves. The good thing, though, is that I'm traveling less. So that's a good thing from a health perspective. But I'm working more because obviously now with Zoom, like all of you, there's so much Zoom you can squeeze within 12 hours, I guess, in a day, that I feel that I have been engaging more than ever with business leaders across the nation. And it's good because I like to be, it's different because it's a virtual world now. But I think we're turning a corner now with vaccination of millions of people in Canada, and soon hopefully being able to get back on the factory floor and visiting a number of your members, because this is always the highlight of my days when I can go and meet the workers, see the technology they're using, talk about innovation, and seeing the evolution in our manufacturing sector in Canada.
Well, you certainly hit the ground running with this one.
Well, I must say that at least it goes back to what I've been 20 years of my life. I spent, as you may know, 20 years of my life in Europe, mainly in big multinational companies, some of which had very large manufacturing footprint, not only in Canada, but around the world. So I learned the ropes early on, and therefore now being industry minister, adding science and innovation, which is quite appropriate, I would say now, because all that is linked together. I often say that science, technology, innovation is what's going to provide the breakthrough technologies and solutions to some of the biggest challenges of humanity. And there's a big role for manufacturing. When I speak to my US colleagues, I always say there's a new sense of togetherness. I must say, when I spoke to the Secretary of Commerce in the US, I said, for me, the big prize is how can we build more together? How can we innovate more together, and how can we sell more together to the rest of the world? And I think this is good news for manufacturers across Canada. We can come to that later because I'm a former trade minister as well. So we can look at the markets that have been expanding. And I think putting Canada in a very favorable position as we're looking to rebuild our economy more resilient, greener after the pandemic. And so I think we're in a moment in history where there's never been a better time to invest in the recovery and gain market share, not only in Canada, but across the world.
Minister, let's just dive right in. What's in the 2021 federal budget for manufacturers?
Well, a lot of things. I think we would not have enough time in the interview if I was to go to all of it. But let me say, for me, it's really a blueprint for jobs and growth. I mean, if you look at that, and more specifically for manufacturers, if I look, for example, at the Strategic Innovation Fund, which I know many of your members are very familiar, focusing on very key areas of our economy, whether it's the life sciences sector, whether it's the automotive sector and the trend towards electric vehicle, whether it's aerospace sector. So we made sure that we would have the means of our ambitions to seize the opportunity that I see in Canada in manufacturing. But also we invested 8 billion in what we have called the Net Zero Accelerator, which is really our green fund to make sure that we can support innovation, that we can support the jobs in the sector, helping to green the economy, because this is all about supporting companies who want to move toward a lower emission future, and at the same time want to provide innovation. And I'm very excited because I think this is really, if you look at where the future is, for me, there's always something about intergenerational equity. We need to invest in it to preserve the job of today, but in the industry of tomorrow, and making sure that small and medium-sized businesses across our nation would be well equipped in order to take the opportunity that is provided. You know, we have come at a tipping point in the world now where consumers are asking, financing agencies are asking, I would say governments are pushing for a greener economy, a greener environment. And we know that a healthy environment leads to a healthy economy. So I am very bullish when it comes to the manufacturing sector in Canada, because our sector is underpinned by talent. And talent is what attracts investments and the ecosystems we've been able to build. Just look how successful we've been. I can think of aerospace. I can think in the electric vehicle. We're trying to bring the battery ecosystem in Canada. And this is all good news for manufacturers, because many of our programs have not only been directed at, I would say, attracting large investments, but also making sure that our small and medium-sized businesses, they can join in the supply chain to make sure they are successful. You may have seen also the money we invested for small and medium-sized businesses to go from analog to digital, because we know that digitization of businesses is key for productivity, for success. And this is underpinned by, I would say, very significant investments in artificial intelligence and quantum computing, which we know will have an impact on all the sectors of our economy. So I would say to those who are with us today, seize the moment, be ambitious, because I think Canada and the manufacturer in this country have everything to succeed, not only domestically, but also internationally.
Mm-hmm. And you did touch on it a little bit, but you know, the budget is allocating money to automotive, aerospace, and life sciences. And I was just wondering if maybe you could provide a little bit more insight into the kind of projects that will be targeted.
Well, if you take aerospace, for example, it's very exciting, by the way. You know, we're talking about hybrid propulsion, lightweight materials, or biofuels with respect to the future of that sector. If you're talking about the automotive sector, well, we've been able to attract big mandates from Ford and GM. You may have seen the investment within Lion Electric, knowing that 40% of the cost of a truck in this case, which they're producing light and medium-sized truck, it's 40% is the cost of the battery. So now having a battery assembly facility in their production site is a real game changer. So that is exciting, because it's also all the supply chain. Think about the hundreds, I would say even the thousands of companies who can connect to the supply chain. I think we're becoming a leader when it comes to electric vehicle, and this is thanks to the ecosystem we have built with, you know, the suppliers that we have in Canada and the shift that you're seeing in the economy. And certainly when I'm thinking about the different sectors of your economy. I mean, you mentioned in the life sciences. Well, definitely there as well. I mean, if you look at what are the two biggest challenges of humanity today, on one end you would have COVID-19, and on the other end you would have climate change. And so, since I took this role, I've been taking immediate strategic action with a long-term vision, certainly in biomanufacturing, because I think Canadians would expect us to take immediate action, to be more resilient, to onshore, to have more domestic production capacity. And that's good news for companies in Canada, because think about the whole ecosystem. And we all know that innovation leads to prosperity. I mean, if you look at the world history, once you innovate, prosperity comes. And at the same time, not only we have been able to support our domestic manufacturer, but we've been able to attract interesting investments in the country, and that's going to continue. The other side is the green economy, and I'm a big believer in that, because you've seen and I've seen the shift in the world, and that's going to be very important, I think, for Canadian companies, and we're going to be there to support them. And I would say to those who are watching, think big, think fast, be ambitious, and you will have a willing partner in our government.
Mm-hmm. And how does innovation attract foreign investment, which is so critical to the growth of Canada's advanced manufacturing sector?
Let's start with talent. It's the people. It always comes back to people. We are blessed to have one of the most educated workforce in the world. Our institutes, our universities, our colleges have been providing the backbone of the pool. And I can think of the investments we've made. Just looking, if you want to talk about the last federal budget with MyTax, creating 85,000 opportunities for young people in work opportunity. We all know that the toughest job to get is the first one. At least that was certainly my case. But once you get one opportunity, then you move on, and everything become easier. So these type, which are based, I spent 20 years, like I said, in Europe. This is very familiar with what you're seeing in Switzerland, what you're seeing in Germany. We're trying to rebuild similar type of ecosystem where there's a role for academia, there's a role for businesses, there's a role for government. And I think we've been pretty successful, because people vote with their feet. And we've seen hundreds of thousands of students coming to our shore. And I think with great people like that, we'll be able to have the talent needed to fuel the growth and the innovation of tomorrow. So I think there's a role for your members in making sure we build, because if you see what is attracting investments these days, it's really the ecosystem. And the ecosystem is built around talent, is built around research and science and innovation, and is built around, obviously, a cluster of companies. We've done that in the aerospace sector. We've done that in the automotive sector. We've done that in the life sciences sector. We're looking at what we can do with our supercluster. Yesterday, I was in Atlantic Canada, in the supercluster on the ocean, the blue economy. We can think about the ones we have, for example, in the digital economy at the other side of the country in Vancouver. And the ones which I'm also very excited is around those who are in the plant protein. How can we feed the world, and how can that help also in the prairies? So I certainly believe that our innovation policies and the world also where we have in Canada something that you would be familiar, Alana, our famous IRAP program. So the Industrial Research Assistance Program, which we recapitalized with almost $500 million. Same thing with Sustainable Development Technology Canada with almost $1 billion. Those are really fueling the type of growth that we need to see. Now we say, how can we commercialize? How can we expand? How can we export? And that's where certainly as a minister, we've had different portfolio from starting in international trade to infrastructure to foreign affairs, and now to industry, science, and innovation. You can imagine that I'm trying to pull the best ideas that you can find in the country, listening to your members and others to make sure that we become a powerhouse when it comes to technology and innovation.
Mm-hmm. And what can the industry do to advance innovation now that there's this government investment in the Innovation Fund?
Well, I would say invest, because now is the time to, the investments that we're going to be making today will define the industry of tomorrow. And oftentimes when I talk to business leaders, I say, what are the breakthrough technologies? What are the breakthrough innovations? Where do you see yourself 20 years from now, in 30 years? How can we help you to bridge that so that you maintain the leadership position, underpinning by, like I say, transforming technology like AI, quantum computing, digitization, which are needed as you go forward. But really, my message is one of support. Bring me your projects. We want to be a partner. And I'm a real big believer in the role of manufacturing. And if you look at the history again of innovation in the world in different countries, there's always been a role for manufacturing. Now we're talking about advanced manufacturing, but Canada in the world, brand Canada is powerful. Stand for stability, predictability, quality, traceability, reliability. I think this is great because when I was Foreign Affairs Minister, and certainly during the biggest health and financial crisis of our century, many colleagues around the world were calling me, and what they were saying is, "Hey, Canada is a safe bet." In a world where stability, predictability, and the rule of law is in high demand and short supply, they think that Canadian companies and Canadian manufacturers, for that matter, they build quality products. They're reliable. They're trustworthy. It's easy to trace where the equipment is coming. And if we can add to that, a greening industry in all sectors, well, I think we have the recipe for success. That's why I'm so bullish. And that's why I spend my days promoting Canada and trying to help entrepreneurs across our nation to succeed.
Mm-hmm. And, from the perspective of advanced manufacturing, something that I've noticed is that there's a current semiconductor shortage across the industry. And Minister, I'm wondering how the budget addresses that challenge, and more specifically, what can manufacturers with a need for chips expect from the budget?
It's a big challenge, huh? It's a world challenge, I would say, a Western world challenge. So this is something we've been talking also with our American colleagues, because since we are talking with the new administration, there's, like I say, a sense of togetherness that we need to look at more. One thing that I've seen is that we're moving from global to local supply chain or regional supply chain. People are putting more emphasis on resiliency than efficiency. And I think that is pretty obvious when it comes to the battery ecosystem or supply chain. And the same thing when it comes to microchip. I think we're, as the Western world, or even the G7, we are facing, or we are feeling the challenges with that. There's significant investment being made in for example, south of the border with our neighbors. And that's certainly something that I'm following very closely, because that had an impact, for example, on the auto sector in particular. And I'm sure many of our members, the manufacturers, when it comes to that, there's no quick fix. It's a very capital intensive industry, ones which is changing rapidly. We all know Moore's law, and the fact that even if you build a plant today, you have to upgrade very quickly. So I think what we need to do, though, is to look more at the supply chain on a continental basis, because for me, the privilege we have is having a very integrated supply chain with our neighbors in the United States. And I always remind our colleagues down there that a decision on one side of the border will have an impact on both, and that Canada is the partner of choice when it comes, for example, in terms of security of supply. It was true with vaccines, but it's certainly true with microchips, and we'll continue to work with them.
Absolutely. And Minister, vaccines are top of mind for everyone these days, it seems. And so can you speak to how the $2.2 billion will be allocated in the biomanufacturing sector, and how this will help vaccine research and development?
Well, we're doubling down. You may have seen that the World Health Organization declared pandemic out of memory was the 11th of March 2020. And within almost no more than a month, we had put almost $1 billion to support made in Canada vaccine, therapeutics, and treatments. And what the budget is doing is doubling down with 2 billion to support companies, from coast to coast to coast on that. We have champions like Accelera in Vancouver, Precision Nano System. I can think of Vito in Saskatchewan. We attracted Sanofi, a vaccine in influenza, almost $1 billion investment. We've seen Medicago in Quebec City now, which is in phase 3 clinical trials. So we may have a Canadian vaccine in a not too distant future. We saw Novavax choosing Montreal as their manufacturing site. And I'm talking also to BioVectra in the Atlantic. So, I'm trying to rebuild the sector, which has been, there's been a decline for over almost 4 decades in the biomanufacturing sector. So my mission is to be more resilient, bring more domestic capacity, onshore as much of the supply chain you can imagine, from syringes, adjuvants, fill and finish, gloves. I'm thinking about everything that we might need. I don't have a crystal ball, but one thing I know is that we need to be more resilient. And with the money we have put in the budget, we are well on our way to have all the capacity we need we won't be able to onshore perhaps everything. I'm cognizant of that. But you'll see we've made investments. We'll continue to make investments. And I still believe that Canada is a very attracting place for the life sciences sector, not only to support our domestic need, but as an export platform. Because let's remind everyone that Canada is the only country in the G7 which has a free trade agreement with all other G7 nations. And that's pretty unique. Now exporters and manufacturers have access to 1.3 billion consumers around the world, in the United States, Mexico, but also Europe. We're the only country which is not physically present in Europe, which has preferential market access in this market of 500 million consumer. And the same thing if you look east, we have now a trade agreement with the TPP country, which is amazing. We've been looking to have a trade agreement with Japan for decades, and now we have one. Actually, Canada is the second largest economy after Japan in the CPTPP. So you think about economies like Vietnam, Malaysia, New Zealand, Australia. So this is great for Canada because we are well connected, and that for an exporter today is a great opportunity, and that's why I'm so bullish when it comes to the potential. And that's why I say to all the manufacturers, be ambitious, seize the moment. I don't think there's ever been a better time, because what we're feeling now is a redefining of our industrial policy following the largest and the most significant health and economic crisis in the century. So we're driving towards a greener economy, an economy which is more based on innovation and science. And I'm certainly excited for the manufacturers, because I think whether it's clean tech, whether it's tech, there's so much that we can bring to help solve the biggest challenges of the planet.
And I love that you brought up the theme of resilience, because I feel like that not only embodies this industry as a whole, but also Canada as well. And so thank you for bringing that theme forward to the table, Minister.
Well, we're going to make it through together. One of the central themes that the Prime Minister had put at the very beginning is that we will have your back for as long as it takes. And I think that resonated in every corner. It felt for all Canadians, for workers, for entrepreneurs, that we would get through this together in a very Canadian fashion. Through the different programs we put, whether it was the wage subsidies, whether it was the rent subsidies, the best way to make sure that we could come out of this crisis as quickly as we have done is to maintain people in employment. And I want to thank our manufacturers, because some of the best practices came from industry, keeping people safe, making sure they put testing protocol in place, making sure that they kept as many people employed as possible, so that when we can reopen, and we have in many areas, although there's some challenges, we're not out of the woods yet, but we have turned a corner. I think that the investments we made in people is the best antidote to a financial crisis which could have come, and certainly one of the best investments in the recovery. And that's why I think the budget is, I would call that a blueprint for growth and jobs, because that's really what it is. to give us the means now of our ambition. But we're going to do that together. There's nothing that we can do without the private sector. I've learned that a long time ago, that governments put the frame, and then it's for the businesses, the entrepreneurs, the workers to make the investments and make sure that we translate that into growth and opportunity and prosperity.
Absolutely. Beautifully said, Minister. And how do colleges and polytechnics contribute to the innovation agenda?
Well, they're essential. I love them because without them, we would not have the talent. That's why our upskilling and reskilling strategy, the MyTax initiative, everything they've done is ensuring our success. If you look who has been successful in the world, just look at cities and regions. It's always around a cluster of research institute, colleges, universities. Why? Because there's a cluster which foster research, science, innovation. Businesses come. There's offshoot of these students start businesses with teachers and others, and that's what you've seen in very successful places around the world. And we have done that in Canada. Just look at artificial intelligence, what's been done in Edmonton, what's been done in Toronto, what's been done in Montreal. It's pretty inspiring, actually, that we in my discussion, again, I'll give you a secret, but a secret that you share with more than one person, I guess, doesn't become a secret anymore. But when I spoke to the Secretary of Commerce in the United States, one thing she noted was that we had a head start when it came to artificial intelligence. And she saw that Canada had already made that leap forward. And that's very inspiring because I believe this is an enabling technology, which will have an impact on manufacturers, just like the data economy. That's the other thing. That's why digitization of our small and medium-sized businesses will be helping our manufacturer to make best use, protect their data, value their data, make use of data. And therefore, the colleges and institutes are essential components of the ecosystem. And it's not just in Canada. Again, look at history, look at very successful regions and cities around the world. And it always I've always been starting with people. So to the extent that we can attract the best, train the best, provide opportunities for the best, there's a great future for Canada.
Absolutely. And so some time has passed since the federal budget was announced. In that time, have you received any feedback from any manufacturers or any suggestions or changes that should be made, if any?
Well, we're always listening, better is always possible. I think I've heard the Prime Minister say that a couple of times. So definitely we have listened. There's a number of programs. I think about the training side, for example, the skills side was something we were hearing. I heard from businesses about digitization as well. That was certainly something they saw that was needed. Many of your members also wanted to have dedicated fund for some of the key industries in Canada, which I think we have delivered. Now it's all about implementation. It's about making sure that we translate what's in the budget into actual projects to create the growth and the jobs that this is meant to create. And we'll be continuing to listen. I've been crisscrossing, well, virtually these days, the country. That's one good thing with virtual. You could be, I remember a day I was doing the Chamber of Commerce of Alberta, and then I could be with the Greater Vancouver Board of Trade within an hour. And all of that coming from my home in Shawinigan, so in Quebec. So today you can do a lot, which is one of the good things. It's more inclusive. It's somewhat allows for the conversation we have this morning and with your members. So we'll be continuing to listen. Like I said, I think there's a critical role for the manufacturing sector in Canada. I think that the new technology, the innovation is good news for the sector. It employs hundreds of thousands, millions of people in our country. And I really think that brand Canada, everything which is made out of Canada, I can assure you, I've been traveling the world representing you. It has, brand Canada has a great potential. And I think that we somewhat underestimate it as Canadians because we take it for granted. But what comes with brand Canada for the manufacturer, like I said, comes quality, traceability, reliability in the minds of people around the world. And therefore, with our trade agreement, with our investments, now it's the time to accelerate and expand whatever investments you thought you could make. And we'll certainly be a partner in your journey.
Absolutely. Minister, what are your expectations for the sector as this COVID-19 situation develops? And, what is it going to look like when we're hopefully someday soon living in a post-COVID-19 world?
Well, the first thing, I want to go back on the factory floor. That's what I'm missing the most, meeting the workers and meeting your members, because that's where I started in my life, So for me, I miss that, to be honest. So that would be item one on the agenda. The other one is to be ambitious. I think that would be my message to your member. Let's be ambitious. Let's seize the moment. The world is turning, is at the tipping point when we're talking about greening the economy. And I think Canada, we have renewable energy, we have the talent, we have the ecosystem. I think that there's never been a better time to be out there and invest and make sure that you capture new market share. So for the manufacturing sector in Canada now, you look at the low interest rates, you look at the programs that have been put in place, government support, the talent which is being provided, which you alluded to, and the, sometimes I say we've been blessed by geography. If you look at our southern neighbor, which is also embarking on this green journey together, I see the opportunities almost limitless for our manufacturers to be extremely successful in this new economy, where consumers, where governments, and where investors are looking for cleaner solution, greener products, greening the supply chain. If you think about Canada, this goes well with our values, with our principle. I think the world agenda is an agenda for Canada and for success for our manufacturers.
That was beautifully said, Minister. Thank you.
Well, it comes from my heart. You can remove the love of the factory floor in someone who's moved to government, because for me, I am a big believer in the potential, and I'd like to hear from your members whenever they think we can do better. We certainly have a big agenda ahead of us, and we will continue to be with you along the journey. And thank you again for having me this morning. It's a real privilege to be able to share this passion and hopefully a bit of energy and ambition with your members, because that's really what gets me up every morning early, is this passion, ambition for Canada. And hopefully that will translate into opportunities for your members.
Absolutely. And Minister, that really does summarize all the questions that I had for you today. Did you have any other final thoughts or comments or anything I didn't ask that you would like me to know about?
Well, listen, you're very good. I'm not sure if I could do your job better than you. I don't believe that. So I think you were, you cover a lot of ground. You cover the key areas for the members. And I would just say, à la prochaine, I hope that we'll be able to all meet together and invite your members to contact me whenever, and making sure that we seize the moment, we're being ambitious, and that together we build the opportunities of today, but also in the sector of tomorrow. And I think with that, I'll sign off from here, and I look forward to meet you in person in a not too distant future. Thank you.
Minister, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. I really enjoyed getting to know you and to learn more about the budget and your vision for the sector. And I really do wish you all the best as you continue to define this new role of yours.
Thank you very much. You've been very nice, and I look forward to see you again soon.